Hey guys, how's it going? So, welcome to another review of winner clip from CAW contest October. Jonathan Garcia has done some fantastic job here, and he's the winner of the October month. Congratulations, everybody! Really good job on this, both the cats. Fantastic work. So, yeah, I'm here to just to give a bit of a review on the winner clip. What could be improved. It's already looking fantastic, but there's always place to improve, right? So, so I would like to share some of my comments and hope it helps. And it helps, to put them comments in your workflow. Later stages when you're animating cat or when you're animating, any other sort of, little creatures like that, definitely can help. Yeah, thank you. So, so yeah, let's dive in then. Yeah, so this is the clip. Let me play this, and this looks fantastic. Really good job. Boy, I really like that. So yeah, so for first time when I observed it, I got like few things in my mind. First thing was yeah, probably by when I anything more than stays 8 frames right in the screen, it's gonna stick in your brain. So if it's the more longer frames, the more it's gonna stick in your brain. So it's always better to jump in and do some really cool poses and stuff. So sorry, my back home is not working. So I'm gonna just draw some sort of a shapes here, weirdly with my mouse. But yeah, so it could have been much more interesting if these legs were slightly little bit more into that sort of a shape. Would have been really really interesting with the spine going on like that. So yeah, it's just that not trying to bring a little bit more closer on that. When you see cat sitting poses from the back, right, you could actually get a bit of a sense that how they normally sit. It's kind of really that nice shape, and they kind of do that sort of a V shape with their ankle, right? So could be definitely better to improvise. Anything more than 8 frames or 10 frames, right? So it's better to invest some really good time on it, so that you actually kind of this shapes, right, sit inside the audience brain, right? So it definitely helps to sculpt some really good shapes. To worth spending some time on making some really cool poses there. But yeah, so the other thing was the tail, right? So tail is something kind of really, easily overlooked. How the tail poses are. You will be surprised, how many animators does that. When you kind of see that. So tail is nothing but it's an extension of your spine, right? So it's a part of your spine, right? If it is straight, it's gonna be like this, isn't it? So when you're bending something like that, so they are like based off of joints, right? So they can't really just bend like really sharp like that. So it kind of really hurts the spine, isn't it? Like I'm just have to find some X-ray for pictures for you. Look at this is sorry, yeah. So if you see the spine, right? Look at that. So that's the spine, isn't it? So you cannot really fold in one. Of course, it's rigging, it's a 3D, it's a CG. So look at that. So this is always like just bend from your pelvis and then kind of extension, right? So it's actually not really like even like look at this when it is down like that. So anyway. So from the pelvis, it's gonna be start going, but that's where you kind of see a little bit sharp, but it's actually kind of a blend from previous, bone structure, right? Like all the combination of the bones, and it is never really have this harsh edges like that, So it's always nice to accommodate the hip a little bit more, If the spine is coming in like this, and you could actually kind of, go a little bit more, and then you can have your shapes. You can have your shapes you can just have whichever shape you want. It's absolutely fine. But what we don't want is bending that, just one, just really sharp or sort of a bend that doesn't really compute, in your brain. Like look at this. This is the spine, right? So I would expect the tail should be something like a bit more of like that, or I could have like something like this. That's okay. Like or if you're something so just have that sort of a thing, and then kind of. So which of the shapes you want, you can do, but let's not break it like that. So I know it's sometimes it's a rig also, or I don't know how is it this rig, but rig is looking great by the way. But again, how we use the controls, just show some influence from the spine. It feels much better, and not only spine, just the tail, but you could actually accommodate some sort of a shape from the hip and pelvis control as well. That really helps you a lot, to convey the cat shapes, right? So yeah, that's something actually popped in my mind when I saw first time. It's really so sharp, like that could be really nice, for me, or maybe like something like that, that was really kind of breaking the whole shape of the pose of the cat, right, spine. So that's something we could really try to find something interesting shapes in there. And there are a few places like this is something not I mean, like with most of the people we kind of tend to finish the shot for the deadlines or like, try to push it. But if you have time and if you're really going for polishing, and sometimes you don't get all the time like deadlines. Sometimes you have free time also in the workplace, or when you're doing your personal stuff. So there's always some sort of people forget to give the foot reactions, like when they actually land, right? So how the feet react for the landing, how the weight, it's absorbing the weight, and a bit of a slide on the foot landing. So since the close-up shots like this, we cannot really get away. It's basically like when you see something like this, it's a CG, right? Look at that. So CG, if something is not moving, it's a dead pixel. So that means it screams CG straight away, which doesn't normally happens in live action, isn't it? So I mean, like we don't really like just pause some muscle like that really quickly. So yeah, so trying to get away from that sort of a CG and 3D look, it's always better to add some really nice poses, on the leg planks, and how it's actually absorbs the weight, and small slides, small turns, that sort of a thing would be definitely helpful on the feet, right? So especially like when you see the feet landing here, I know it's kind of next to the curtain, it's kind of dead, kind of hidden, but it's kind of really dead. If you see these guys, this guy is much better actually job from any other thing, so which is great. But again, like this feet, right? Look at this feet, kind of like just one. It's kind of like what you call in VFX lazy animation, or anywhere, like. So it's kind of just one key set, one key, and just leave it like that. So it's better to always kind of, if I pick up some reference, right? So if you kind of see this, so let's kind of see how it's kind of, look at that, the kind of the feet kind of goes up a little bit because of you got the pads and you got the fingers up, and then when you're trying to get up, and your fingers comes down, and then kind of the small stress on the fingers and the paw, and then kind of like leg lines kind of going forward. So there's always that sort of a reaction. What it tells us is like a small sort of a slide, when you're turning leg this way, a bit of a paw turning that side, right? So these are the ones actually kind of brings that extra element of believability, and so do that. That's when your animation supervisor would love to see in your shot, especially close up like this, right? So yeah, I mean those are the details could be definitely better, when you're trying to uh, you know, work on animation shots like this, especially close-up shots. And when they're actually kind of lift feet, right, they don't really go like clean sweep like that. So based on the angle you are going, like if I'm actually trying to stand up, from my chair and then turn and then get up in this direction, you see my feet would be like this, and then I'm gonna take the feet off from the ground like that. So I won't really stick the feet, and I'm not gonna do it like clean peel off, right? So it's always that which direction you're going. So you always have that sort of a take off from that direction. So it'll be nice to plan those things, especially your cat is going to like peel off from there to this direction, and go like this. It's always nice to have the peel off like that. I'm sure it's the reference also. Let me see. Yeah, look at this. Look at this. It's kind of this is the last point. It touches the ground because it's all lifting like that. It's not really lifting in a clean way. I mean, these are the simple things, but they actually add up a lot of value to the shot. In overall, whole shot wise. But yeah, so those are the things. And spine shapes, overall spine shapes, it's really great. But there are places it could be slightly better, where we can, especially places like this, right? So I mean, like if you see from the top view, so that's the head, let's say, that's the chest, and that's the bum, right? So like so he can be sitting like that, that's sort of, but here it's like a really straight, so it would be really nice to see that a small shape like that. And then when he turns, so that's when he see the chest can go a little bit more, and the hip can come a little bit more in. So it's kind of always an arc, like when they do this, when you're turning like this. So it's always that sort of arc we'd like to keep in mind. It's really straight. So that's your chest, that's your hip, and that's your head, right? So it's always nice to have that sort of arc. So as we pass here, right? So it's kind of really, it's actually there, but it feels like this is a bit more straight, and that's a bit more straight, and there's a bit of a really good arc on your, chest, from chest to head, which is great. But it wouldn't be like, just like this. It's kind of really nice to have that sort of a small arc on the body, and then try to turn your head, get this little bit more of that sort of a body and arc from the top view. It's gonna tell really great. So right now, if you see, I'm not really able to see the shape of the creature, like just head is sticking out from nowhere, right? So I would be really like to see something like this where you can actually see a little bit more of that shape coming out, like, I see there. So yeah, you see that there's a chest come out, and there's like, a really good like arc shape, right? So even here, look at this kind of really bend down towards it, and then kind of really nice shapes. So those are the ones could be actually enhanced from the top view. You might not notice from the camera, but you can actually see the essence of that in the camera on the shape, body shape, and you can feel it, but you don't see the much details. So those sort of elements can be definitely help you to take the shot to next level. And yeah, places like this, I'm not really sure how straight from the top view, so it would be really nice to see that sort of a small, bend on the body would be really nice, like that, can be definitely helpful on this. Like he's really looking up to this side, right? So yeah, so those sort of small elements, and especially here also, like, it's kind of really loses into like, one shape. So it would be nice to see like how it's actually kind of to see a little bit more like from the top view. So he could be like this, or she could be like this. So yeah, those little elements, like right now super straight, so yeah, so those are the elements could be definitely add a lot of value. And especially when the bend, they can actually bend, especially long cats like this, when the bend, right? I don't know how much control we have in the rig, so it's always nice to see that sort of like spike on the bone. Like if you see the x-ray we are talking, right? When the bend, look at this is sort of a bend. They kind of really, if the longer the cat, the more bend you have, that, that sort of a thing, right? So would be nice to keep in mind when you're animating that, the compressions, like not compression, when they come closer, you see the spine raises when they go really like part, chest and hip. So the chest, sorry, the spine count, goes down a bit more softer. So those sort of a shapes, right, can be definitely, like, especially here, like if I go back to your reference, and if I see this, so he's kind of really like, this is like a bit more like fly shape right now. And yeah, look at this. This is where kind of he stretches right now, because it's a bit of a stretch, right? He's covering the long area. As soon as he stretches, he comes back to attack position. Look at the spine, because he's coming, bringing the closer in. He's bringing the hip closer to the chest. So look at the spike on the spine, right? So it looks really, generally, it should come out with the rig also sometimes, or if not, we could actually try to push a little bit with the controls. It's just that we have to keep an eye on the shapes. We need to sculpt our shapes. I really don't want to depend on the rig, or I really don't want to depend on, not rig. Sorry, I don't want to depend on the breakdowns which computer gives us, right? Between the poses, it's always nice to have jump in there. Just give some sort of sculpt your own poses, right? Right. So if you sculpt your own poses, you wanted your motion to go through those poses, not just pose and pose and whatever the computer gives us, right? So that would be a another level to push the shot, to get that really great believability. And the shapes, these are the shapes which actually strikes in our mind, right? So if the cat's, that's like a typical sort of a cat, kind of sitting, that's always there in our mind. Like, so these are the shapes which resonates with the cat, right? So if you could try to bring the similar shapes in our animation, will be super successful. So yeah, again, like when it goes to that extension, right, the bodies get extension, the spike is gone down, other the spike is a little bit more, right? So those shapes can be slightly improved our animation. So I would really keep that in mind. But yeah, so you have a really great stuff here, like, the spike, and it kind of loses here, and again it would be nice to see a bit more like stretch down, and then again accumulating back a little bit here, because you're bringing your chest, sorry, your hip closer to your chest. So that sort of a thing, a small accumulation of that spine thing, would be definitely great there to see. But yeah, this is looking great. So yeah, awesome, really good job on this one. And yeah, so the main thing, the tail shape was one thing. And coming to tail back again, because the whole shot is we are looking at the tail only, literally in the back of the tail, right? So we got to figure out where we are actually putting our money into, like, are we putting, because the shot itself is like from the back of the cat. Is always nice to understand how the spine and how the chest, how the how the connection between the chest and the hip and the tail works, right? So this is one of the great assignment for that. Most of the people just see the cat from the front view and animate the side view only, but this is like typical shot where it's like VFX shot, like where you can see the animals from different angle, and then you need to focus on one particular angle, right? So to make it look really nice. So this is one of the really nice shot like that. But yeah, so in this one, I would really focus on the back and the spine, right? So again, the main hero here is sometimes tail, right? Most of the time is the tail. So tail is the one which is attacking, like, the other guy. So the interaction, right? So here, I would say tail, no, normally for cats, right? So tail have its own brain sometime, and sometimes the tail can be reaction for the body movement, right? It's like a trunk, if you see elephant does this, it has its own brain, and then sometimes, it's a drag, by the head, right? It's a reaction performed by the trunk because of the head, moving around. So it's like that basically, like, it has its own sort of a brain sort of a thing sometimes, right? So here, so first he tries to attack with the tail, isn't it? Like, so shape could have been much more interesting here, like, like that sort of a thing, would be definitely good. And then when you're trying to, try to do that, right? It's always interesting to, yeah, again, the shape here. But apart from that, it's looking great. But yeah, so that's the first thing is like, he's trying to interact with the tail. So tail is the one who is speaking to him first, like, just get out, like, he just whips the tail, and then this one is a reaction of the tail. The entire part, right, is a reaction followed by your hip, right? So now it has to listen to the hip, not really leading, right? So here he looks like he's leading a lot. Look at that. He's leading the hip. So it has to be reaction. Let me see that. Yeah, look at this. So this is the where he's like super hyperactive, like, he's kind of like, throwing on him like that, which is great. And now afterwards, he's kind of really, he just like smacks him and then brings it back. And now whatever is happening, he's kind of submitted his will to this guy. So now is your hip is kind of like, opening, like, coming out, right? So that's when you have this whip coming, which is actually generated from the hip, and then it's kind of taken over to the tail, right? So that's sort of a small, and then after this, boom, that, and then coming back is a reaction, right? So which is kind of, we are slightly missing on that area a little bit, and again we kind of kept a little super stiff around here. Look at this, is kind of, it's always nice to have that bit of, it's all a chain, right? It's a chain of bones connected together. You cannot really stop like that. Something, it's always the, it shares and then come back like a whip, like a bit of that, right? So that's something we are really, kind of, we can push here. That would be really nice. And yeah, so it's like, if you analyze here, like, it's nice to see that he's the one, like tail is the one who is speaking to him, and then he speaks with his hand, and his head, now head is coming towards it. So that's sort of a reaction we should actually able to feel. So first he's not really responding, like if you see there's quite a lot of movement on the head, it's not conveying that he's speaking with the tail. So if there is a big move here, your eye goes there, and you feel like, should I see the tail? Should I see the head? It's kind of that, audience will get struggled, isn't it? So keep it really simple on the head, and then let this take over, and then the head comes in, and then he takes over with the hand. So whichever is the active, like we got to make sure that whichever the part is active on the screen, we have to give bigger motion. Keep the rest of it slightly a little bit less focusing, means less covering distance. So that would actually kind of tell audience to see, oh, do you see the tail, and then, oh, now he's actually coming up with his like head, right? Boom. So and then first he comes out on him with the head, and then head comes in a really stop position, and then it's the hand which speaks to him, boom, 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 that sort of a thing, right? Rest everything is really quiet. Look at the tail is quiet. So yeah, that sort of element, we need to visually show in the shots, right? That's why we see that the difference. If I'm doing out of my hand, yeah, that's great, fantastic. But when that's the benefit of being, reference with us in the shot, just to understand and observe, like, how we can bring that extra believability, right? So what sort of a essence we can take. Essence meaning this, like, which is moving first, that's where he's kind of speaking, and visually that's what talking, and then the head comes in and then gets the thing, and then like, I'm gonna attack you right now, and then it goes this, like head is kind of a still, and this is does the job, right? So it's splitting, the energy is being split to the tail, head, and the hand, the hand, right? So the visual language where audience has to see, right? Those are the elements, can observe from the reference and try to bring into, that's what I call, bringing the reference to the short, not just copying the reference. People think it's I mean, it's not just copying the reference, it's like a tracking, that's not really something we do in animation. We understand the creatures, we understand how the shapes would work, not just matching frame by frame, frame by frame, right? So it just to understand how he would react, and once it's actually injects into our workflow, then next shot, when you're working with a cat, you kind of keep these things in the mind, how the feet would work, how the foot reactions, how the spine would work, how the tail would work, how visually I need to, represent the action in the shot where audience can follow nicely rather getting lost in everywhere, right? So yeah, that's something I would really, borrow from the reference. And the second thing, right, most of the time, right, this is always tricky, where we kind of, go wrong sometimes with the eyes and, head, right? We don't really focus on something. We kind of, because yeah, it could be that sort of a tendency of animation, like, your chest drives your hip for most of the blocking part, and we have time, we try to put the head in whole space and try to break it down and, try to have its own, like, sort of, look at some targets and, kind of looking at focusing on some points, so that's what it's missing sometimes. It would be more clear, like, if it is really like, if the cat is looking at something and then like this, right? So you can focus it, but sometimes the cat is really moving a lot. Like especially here, we don't look at this is kind of really quite a lot. I can't really. If you could focus on the eyes on the shot or face, you will be successful. That means less spacing we need to give. If the eyes are going like this and head is going like that, it's very hard to see. The cat comes in like this and still, kind of around there. It's easy to concentrate on the face and connect with the creature or character, right, or animal. If the eyes are like this and face is like this, you can't really focus. But if I see the reference, right, I can actually track the nose. I can track the shape of the white patch there on the face, right? Of course, it's dark, but still you can see that mouth. It's kind of, if I play this, right? See, you kind of see, it's kind of the whole face is around that range. It's not really moving any bigger. If the cat head is there, cat head is there, cat head is there, cat head is there, you kind of struggle to follow that, right? So you won't really get that sort of a feeling that, oh, I'm actually following the cat and I'm going. I can understand cat more what's actually he's thinking in there. So you get connected, right? So that's something we are missing. We are almost there, but it just that try to keep the minimum sort of. He just comes in and then drops, and then all he does is like focus on you and scratch. So yeah, that's sort of the thing, right? So right now, the bigger move you have on the the body and the head, it's kind of really feeling that feeling of you really focus like is it going like that, so scratch, right? So yeah, that sort of a thing is missing if you keep on going. Like you can't really connect with the character, right? So I mean, not just this guy. I mean, most of the animals, most of the short, right? We got to feel and understand why the creature is doing in a such a way what they're doing at that point of time, right? So that helps a lot. So yeah, so try to focus on that little bit. Try to minimize the moment on the head and more focusing on the paw. So paw is the one who is speaking all the time, right? So like if you see here, look at that. So paw is the one covering the distance and like whoop whoop whoop. So yeah, those elements would be definitely good to see. But again, like this is something sort of a basic sort of stuff, right? I mean, it's like a regular animation sort of a thing. But every time you kind of move something, so try to get in a really clean arc. I'm not going to go into arcs, as everybody knows that everybody knows animation. So I don't want to go really there. But yeah, it would be nice if you could actually follow that sort of really clean. Like I was actually downloading a small. Oh, sorry, the reference here. Anything you see, that if you track this guy, right, it's kind of a bigger space, like boom, really shooting a bigger space from there to there. It's quite a big space, isn't it? Like he goes really mental. Look at such a big space. It feels like a click, right? So I wouldn't recommend to go like from there. I can't really follow that sort of a fast. Sorry about the mess here. Your eye cannot really follow such a big changes, right? I would recommend to like tone down to half of it, so then you can actually see that, you know. So you can bring in the whole for a bit, and then like you can actually swipe it. It feels much more interesting than it. So the bigger the space, it's gonna go really fast, like a motion blur, and you don't get to see much actually. So yeah, so those elements can be definitely improvise your shot a little bit more. I think this is quite too far away. I think this is like a really straight shape, so it would be nice to see a bit of a bend on that and try to like or maybe that sort of a thing. So and then you can have your thing like going for attacking a little bit more. If you see that, what's the frame number 22, 23, right? So look at that, the sort of a shape, really good shape, right? So that's the scapula. Then you have this, right? So it's kind of really nice. And again, the shaping wise, look at that. You could actually follow the path of this guy, like this kind of there and there and there. You could actually see that, and you can see the hand for slightly longer. But in our shot, it goes really faster because of spacing is too big. Spacing of really big. You need to bring it in there, and then like you need to at least like register to the audience that he's going to swipe. If you do this, you might not. If you do this like fast or slow, and then so yeah, that sort of element can be definitely good. Spacing on the scratches and the swipes basically. And the other thing, right? So it would be nice to have this reacting a little bit more nicely. This is the ankle basically, right? How we do this, the ankle, right? So it's always like if you're trying to get up, right? This is the one kind of, brings a little bit more push and then try to go. So it would be always nice to see how it's actually absorbing the weight, right? And then how it's actually kind of releasing the weight to take the step forward. So that's sort of a retreat reaction, especially here. You're pushing the whole weight, right? So it would be nice to see that stiff part coming a little bit more down. So just to bring that sort of a weight into the, if I'm actually pushing the weight, I'm going to have this, right? So those sort of elements can be definitely good. And even here, like, when you're trying to get up, right? It's just going like it's a rig, isn't it? Like, it's kind of really goes it. So what we don't want to do is like, just follow like a 3D rig. So we need to break the shapes. We need to make sure that we are using a little bit more of a breakdown on these guys. How is this kind of really gonna go? And after you drop the feet, it's a bit of absorbing the weight and then coming back. So those are the small elements. Otherwise, the whole shape, right? If you see, the whole shape is kind of remains the same afterwards. Look at that. It's kind of the same shape. It remains there for longer. We need to make sure that he absorbs the weight. If you're trying to push the weight and you're trying to lift this one, you're going to push the weight onto this one. That means you're actually absorbing the weight. That mechanism, right? This mechanism is really nice to convey the weight there. So that's something we are missing. And yeah, if you see these guys, so it doesn't have to really super like when you're turning, right? So you could have a small slide and you could actually start bringing your elbow, like your sorry, this is the knee and this is the elbow, right? So you can bring this longer elbow a little bit more backwards, would be definitely helpful to see. Like, otherwise you see the spaces, right? Big boom, like such a big space is too much, and boink. It's colorful dead there. Colorful dead there. Again, look at this. This is what something we can actually improvise. Oh my god, sorry, my drawings are messy. Look at this. These spots, right? 1, 2, 3, boom, really big, right? So instead of having so much like there, and then kind of dead, I would really use something like this, probably a little bit more, and then bigger, and then kind of small spaces. It's kind of really feels more spacing like this, probably closer space, bigger space, and then closer space. So then it feels much more nicer than having like one space, one space, and then more spaces there. So it doesn't feel right like that. So it doesn't feel like it's smooth or stuff. So yeah, that probably you got to keep in mind with all the spacing, like how you place the feet, how your elbow reacts, how your knee reacts, how your hip reacts, how your head reacts as well, right? So yeah, so try to have that sort of elements in your shot when you're tracking, you're polishing sort of thing. It'll be definitely helpful. And again, the place where he dropped that feet, right? So it's actually should be absorbing, isn't it? Like, this should be like coming down and then slightly go up, maybe like if you want like bit off with that. So those are the elements can actually break and give you the sense of weight, right? So otherwise it's going to look very rigid and stuff. I don't know whether you had a time or not, but if you don't have time, like if you have time and from next time, probably keep those things in the blocking stage itself, so that you start seeing the creator already in your shot and it feels much more interesting and nice when you're actually it motivates and inspires you as well, right? To see more cat. But yeah, so that's that I really like that feeling. Like I could actually compare to like other entries. This have such a great feeling that I could focus the eyes, I could focus the the body mechanics, turn and shape, and these are the little bits that I'm being nitpicky here, giving you the comments. But yeah, overall it's a great job, man, really good job. So especially places like this, right? So these sort of straight things we could actually break. Like if I'm looking from the top, so he's like this, and then so you have that sort of a tail, right? So your body is kind of turned like this, and then your tail can be like a bit more of balance like this, definitely. So what we have is like your head is there, chest is there, your hip is there. So tail can be balanced like this or balanced like this. So you got to see that when you're actually having your leg coming in like that from the top, your head is coming out, so you got to, like, probably balance from your leg like that, right? And then your tail, because you're sharing the weight, right? So when you throw your body out, you're gonna throw your body out like this on the on your hip, right? So to balance properly. So it feels like we are not doing that here. We're like really straight. Let me see what's the frame number 30. Yeah, see that? But when it does here, right? So he kind of really goes away from the camera, and boom, look at that. There's a bit of that sort of, you can see from the top, you can actually see that he's sharing the weight because your body is further, so your back is like slightly out, right? So the balance is slightly, off, not off from this way. From the top, it could be slightly better actually to make it a little bit more nicer. And again, like here, right? After you kind of come back, like you come back, right? You kind of gonna go relax here. Your chest comes down, your hip goes back, and your tail could actually swing a little bit more towards that. So that's kind of a taken really nice, weight shift there. Right now, the weight shift is just sitting on that, but your body is like, if you see from the top here, right? So from the top here, so that's the body, that's the chest, that's it, right? So if you're turning like this, it's always nice to have your hip coming in like this. So that's sort of a balance. And your hip is coming, the chest and head is coming like this here. So you could try to have that sort of a tail there, So you can balance the body nicely. Right now, you are, that's your head, that's your chest, your body is really straight. It's not really balancing, So that sort of weight on the tail could be definitely better, feels much more nicer. So when I'm turning like this, look at me, automatically my hip actually goes onto weight shifts onto this side. But when I'm turning like the same thing for the cats as well. Right now, you are really aggressively like, like this, but your body is not really like towards the, other side on the weight shift on the other leg, and your tail is sticking towards like, closer to the camera. So that's where it looks slightly weird on the shape wise. So it would be nice to have a bit more rotation and then, let the tail go away from the camera. It feels much more interesting. And the other one, what I observed on this one is this shape, right, is kind of really too big, like too much. And again, being straight leg, right? So it's maybe something really we could try to visually can, make it a little bit more interesting. So a little bit more like that would be definitely interesting, like, being like other side of the bone there. It's much more interesting to have like this rather having a really straight leg, right? So unless you are like straight leg can happen only when you're actually like, on this, and then when you have this leg is on, on the go, sort of a thing. So that's absolutely fine. But right now it feels like there's a lot of, I'm not too sure how is that. Yeah. So see this, there's a bit of that essence going on, and a bit of that, right? Not really sharper, what we have in the. So yeah, look at this kind of really sharp. So yeah, just kind of blend in a little bit more like that. So it kind of, and again, so sort of like this. It feels a bit more like cattish sort of a thing. Right now it's like very CG and 3D shapes, right? And yeah, when he's looking, right, so probably he's looking down, so he's not looking at the tail, or he's not really scratching or something. So that's where the lookouts are really important, because that is the one you would like to get connected with the creature or animal, so you know where the animal is looking. So by looking at this, right, it's very tricky that he looks down, or I'm not really sure, like he's looking there or he's looking there. That now he's looking at the tail. I can see that. So and then he kind of hits the thing. That's fine. And now he should be like, oh, I pissed him off, like and he has to follow him, like what is he gonna do to him? And he's like, you need to react, right? And again, interaction. It's a big thing, when you're actually animating, animals or creatures. It's always like one guy reacts to other guy all the time, or one guy, like they both are trying to like fight each other. It's a different thing, but most of the time this guy would be like a bit more reactive to the other guy, or when this guy reacts, does the first reaction, this guy reacts and then try to take over, right? So it's not both of them fighting together, and it's always nice to connect, like the eye line, the energy goes from one guy to guy, and then this kind of reacts, and we should feel that, right? And then it's kind of that sort of a thing. So you should visually feel that motion going in, invisible motion going to one creature to another creature or character, right? So this is where probably we are like not really getting connected, but globally it's really works better, like when this guy comes in and this is really working better, you can actually feel that the energy is transferring and he's getting scared. It feels really nice visually. But this is me being nitpicking, like we could be try to focus a little bit more on the places where he's attacking, and then how is he reacting, and like here there's a really good reaction going on there, but it kind of a really dialed. I'm not sure how is in the reference. So look at that. He's constantly is chasing his tail. Like if you see this, right, he's constantly chasing his tail, and then he's like kind of come out of that zone. Like, oh, okay, so tail is gone there, and then I'm looking at my paw, and then I'm looking at that guy. Oh, he's actually really gonna come at a big way. Now I need to see and then like block it, So he's kind of tail and the paw, and then that sort of a small area he tracks, right? So define your that sort of area tracking, so then you will have a motivation to animate your head based on that, how the cat would react, right? If you're looking up, your body would react back. If you're looking down, your body would react in different way, right? So pulling forward or backward, so those are the elements will drive you in a really great way, and it kind of gives you motivation, and it kind of tells you where you are going, and what you should be doing to in order to achieve that, right? So now he's actually looking the cat and going away from the cat. That's when he's like, oh shit, like let me go away. That sort of a thing. So yeah, the head movements are really really crucial, and eye darts are really really crucial. Those are the ones which actually drives the entire head, and that actually shows the impact on decision making of the creature, right? Am I gonna go? Am I gonna attack? I'm gonna look around, right? So they plays a major role. So yeah, try to connect with the head dots is really good, and that's what's slightly missing. And I would say probably go away from the sort of a CG shapes. Uh, so go away with this sort of a CG shapes. This is like CG, right? So try to sculpt some sort of a shape. I was actually looking at some other like references, like every time they kind of look at this, the paw is like this, right? So kind of really close, and then when you see your breakdowns here on the like look at this kind of really, and of course you might not have time, or you didn't have time, not sure. It would be nice to see the breakdown. Look at that. This entire shape is going together. It cannot be possible like that in the real world. So you cannot have entire shape going like stick to the body, like it's always I have to hold my muscles to keep it straight like that. It's always that sort of a breakdown naturally happens, right? So because it's a CG and you have the controls, it's easy to go with the chest or something. So try to avoid that and try to break that down and break the shapes, right? If you see this cat in slow motion sort of a shot, right? See, it's never the same from there to there. Even though it's a weird camera view, you could still see the breakdowns quite nicely, right? So it's not yeah, the places like this. Look at this. It's kind of start from here, breakdown, right? So yeah, look at this. This rotation of the paw, like you see this rotation of the paw to keep on coming in, and how they kind of opens up, right? Kind of really spreads, and then we keep on going, like this sort of a shape, right? Every time when you do the attack also, right, you're gonna have like this sort of that sort of a swipe, right? Would be definitely good, but right now what we're doing is just this. So it would be nice to see, not really like a 2D, or like have or it's not 2D but too much of cartoony breakdown. Would be nice to have that sort of a small breakdown could actually do the job. So there's not much of a breakdowns. And again, even this opening up this, right, the great, but before opening probably could have a close one, and then open and then swipe. Like if you see there's other references here. um yeah, it's interesting to see how they kind of look at. Yeah, look at that. So only on the swipe, like you could actually go a little bit more drag, and then like that sort of a thing can be definitely helpful. Breaking those things can be definitely helpful. Another thing, like coming to the polish, right? So but when you kind of yeah, I think especially here it's very evident and clear, right? So if you see this head turns, right, they're really really sharp. Look at that, super sharp. It looks like you run out of time and then you finish the shot. I can understand, but it would be always nice to actually kind of every time you move, right? So it's always nice to track the nose or eyes, right? It's kind of not just this and then dead, kind of really, if I'm actually tracking my nose tip, right, kind of like this, bit of that, right? It kind of ends like that. If you see any slow motion reference, you kind of feel that really nicely. And again, the places like this is a really good time, like you can actually kind of really like that sort of a small. It's not really like it's not really just coming and stopping like that, like a really sharp shapes. So it's always nice to have that sort of arc shapes in the body. And again, Head slightly feels very stiff, like all this part of the body here, right? Whoop, whoop, look at this. This entire body goes together. That never happens, right? Look at this, the whole section, right? So many frames. It's all look like you're just animating the COG. So that's another way of, there's a clean way of animating, not really use the rotations in particular order so that it just moves everything. So how can we break it down? These are the some really, nice workflow techniques, can be added to your work, like, how to break that down. What the main concern is, we shouldn't be seeing the whole creator going because it never happens. What's the frame range? This is 39 to 48, right? So 39 to 48. Look at that. 39 to 48 is he's actually compressing the chest back and trying to calm down a bit, and then compressing the chest back to the spine to get the spine shape, and then you're trying to like bring in back the whole thing. It's not really moving all together. It's kind of a hand coming down. It's compressing. This is rolling down, and then this kind of pressing down. So there's so many things happening, and then once it's kind of a stop there, and the head is like kind of you know taking it back and then kind of looking up now. So it's not really all of them going together. So it's always nice to have that breakdowns happens. Nice to see the breakdowns there. So that would actually elevate this to that naturalism level sort of thing. It brings to that level where that's where animator and a good animator goes, right? Breaking down, adding those extra believability details. That's where we need to see ourselves and we need to push our animation into. But yeah, apart from that, it's really good shot, man. Really nice. I would really like to play with the ears as well a little bit more. They're slightly rigid at the moment, and I don't know what sort of a time you didn't have, but I would really like when they're actually angular, they're gonna go like a little bit more, to go slightly backwards, and they kind of go there and really dead. So I would always try to follow that arc on the ears all the time. Like I mean, not just this guy, any guy. Like if you see um, any animal, cow, buffalo, anything like the sheep, like when you see them slow motion, right, they never look at the arcs. Is such a cool arc is actually completing there. Look at that. So they doesn't stop. They kind of boom and they're like boom again, right? So they because it's kind of all the joints they kind of go like that. They can't just in one direction, right? It's kind of that. So if you could actually try to work on that, like not to kill exactly, once you're like boom, boom, boom. So that like boom, bit of that small reaction because that's what it's going to keep your cat alive. That's what it's going to bring the organicness to the cat. So yeah, those elements can be definitely helpful if you are putting that into the polish. Try to push this to a really good polish level. Can be a great shot in your reel, and yeah, the reactions on this after you drop, it's not much of the relaxing mechanism going on. And instead of having the straight, I would bring a little bit more, a little bit more inward like that. So it can be definitely helpful, and some sort of a relaxation after you sit down, bit of that on the hip, and bit of a tail as well. How it's kind of reacting. So just kind of a soft down little bit, or kind of now it starts speaking on its own language. Now it's all reaction, so you just kind of come in there and you kind of, I really like that bit again. Look at this. The entire tail is going together like whole shape, right? All the shape is really going together. So there is a two elements overall I see, right? I mean, I'm not gonna give you comments on break everything, make it smoother, but what I'm trying to tell here is to bring that natural essence from the reference and what we can observe detail from reference and what we can actually put in here. That's one form of looking at the shot. Another form is once you have all these details, right, then you will have your breakdowns automatically. You don't need to worry about the breakdowns. So right now, this is a dragging mechanism happening here, and then he's kind of okay. Now I'm in good shape, and then as soon as you touch the curtain, he's like, oh shit, this is really bad, and then he's like, I don't like it. Let me come back. That's reaction is good, but here, is he reacted by the hip or is he doing its own thing? If you can keep that reason behind the movement, then you wouldn't have this rough, sort of a straight line. Is he controlled by the hip? If he's controlled by the hip, then you have a really nice overlap. Overlap is this. Or if you have his own mind, he will be doing some sort of a small movements. I'm not really sure how it's in reference. Let me see. Yeah, look at that. He just like, okay, now I'm kind of done with him. Now let me look at this paper. Let me go back and sit like properly, like and then so you have his own mind there. So is he have that's what the reason behind the movement we need to understand. So if you can understand that, if you do that, in your assignment. So what is the reason here the tail is going stiff? Am I actually animating the tail by its own brain, like tail have its own brain, or is it a reaction of the hip? Once you know that, then you wouldn't have this sort of a straight tail going on. I don't want to give comment like, oh, you could have broken the tail. But what is the reason behind breaking the tail? If you know the reason behind the movement, right, it's easy for you to break down automatically. Like, is it thinking in a good way? Is it not thinking in a good way? Is it really as a reaction for the hip? It solves everything. If you have the motivation, then you wouldn't leave the tail like that, for just, that's why, we need to understand the reference a lot. But yeah, it's a great job, man. I mean, this is not, this is me really nitpicking and trying to push this awesome shot to another level to make it like, really nicer. But yeah, it's a great job, man. Really good job. I like it. Yeah, overall, it's really nice. And yeah, the especially head movements, right? Even this is for everybody. Like, every time you animate something, yeah. So yeah, if you see this one, right? If you This is a slow motion shot, isn't it? Look at the track, the nose. It's always does such a sweet arcs. It cannot be like that. Look at that. So you can follow the eyes, you can follow the nose. It's kind of really, if you follow the tips of the whiskers, right? You see how really nice, arcs it covers, right? So that kind of natural, this is really natural. Look at this. It's not never sharp, right? So yeah, those are the elements I would really focus on. Cat doesn't really just go with the chest. It's kind of really always focus on something. And when you lift up, that's when the body reacts for the head. So that's why the head reaction or looking at are really important. And try to track this arcs on the head. Not just the head, but the nose and that sort of thing where it's actually going. And the spacing, are not really big spaces. And try to have really generally like sort of if I'm doing a small head tone, right? So I would start small space and a bigger space, and then probably bigger space, and then kind of observe a little bit more. That sort of a space kind of really feels organic. If the spaces are missing, they're big, and then a kind of a stop, and then kind of have the shapes there, big move, and then dead there. So we don't want that. It takes some time for anything to move. It can frame more frames and then stop. Based on that, it can define the weight. If it's a heavy animal, it takes so many frames, and then it takes so many frames to stop. If it's a really small animal, really fast. But the spacing is kind of what we call like organicness. That's what it's going to bring you. If you have that sort of a spacing quite nicely. Like if I wanted to track one example here, right? So let's say you have the cat here, and you have the cat, like such a big space, great, and then kind of right, it's kind of static afterwards. Oh, look at that. Big one, and then small, and then big again, and then small. So this is an uneven swing. If I have to do like, I would probably that sort of a spacing I will do. And don't just stop it there. So try, it's not just one axis, right? It's always this, like when you're stopping based on the look, right? So you kind of have that sort of rotation as well. Like if you follow this eyes, right? It's not really just what, look at that. He just comes in there and does a bit of that, right? He doesn't come and just stop there. So try to complement, not just translation or just rotation. If you're just having one rotation, complement with other rotation to just stop there, yeah. So try to break down your rotations and translations can be definitely helpful on the polishing. But yeah, so those sort of small details, but they are the details which you don't see but you feel them, right? So that's what the animation, that's what it makes that good animation to awesome animation. This is why you remember more, because it feels so natural, it feels so realistic. So try to get that sort of elements in there. But yeah, at least if you start doing that, right, it's going to become like a workflow for you in the next coming shots. So yeah, definitely great work, and keep going. This one, Jonathan Garcia. Great job, buddy. Thank you. And the other guy, Mujabta, Mustafa Mujabta, he has done really good job as well, man. Thanks, Mustafa. It's really good job. So keep going, man. You guys have done a really fantastic job. But yeah, great job, guys. Thank you. Yeah, cheers. Bye.